Well, greetings, everyone. My name is Father Nolan, and we will be getting going with our Jesuit Context on Facebook Live, our information night coming to you from the Boston College High School Enrollment Office. And we're just going to get started in a few minutes. Our theme this evening is our Jesuit Context. So thank you all who are joining us. It's great to see that we're beaming out there. Hello, Lori. Welcome to the show. It's great that you can join us. We'll get started at 7:30. So tell your friends to join us, respective families. Special welcome to our current families and alumni. We should have a great evening talking about our Jesuit context today. Special welcome to Esther. Thank you, Natu. It's great to see you joining us. We'll get started at 7:30. And just as a reminder, from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, we'll focus our theme tonight, our Jesuit context, on our Arrupe division, our 7th and 8th grade. And then starting at 8 o'clock, we'll have a couple of new guests and focus on our high school, how the Jesuit context plays out in our high school. So welcome to all of us who are joining us on Facebook Live. Well, let's get started. My name is Father Patrick Nolan, and I work in the enrollment office here at BC High. I'm also the chaplain to athletics, and I've taught 7th grade here. And it is great to be with you this evening. Tonight is our first installment of our information nights coming to you from our enrollment office. And we'll be doing this every Wednesday night, as you can see in our fancy scroll below, at 7:30 to 8. We'll be focused on our Arrupe division, our 7th and 8th grade. And then at 8 p.m., we'll focus on our high school. And each week on Facebook Live, we'll have a different topic or a different theme, something that's particularly distinctive to BC High. And so our theme for tonight is our Jesuit context. And we'll start off with our guest, Ms. Margaret Felice, who is joining us here. It's great to see you, Margaret. So we will start off today with our Jesuit context. And Ms. Felice, maybe you can share a little bit about your role here at BC High.
Thank you so much for having me. So my name is Margaret Felice, and I have been at BC High. This is my 15th year. So I've been here before Arrupe existed, in those dark, dark days before we had a 7th and 8th grade. I started working in high school campus ministry and then moved over to the Arrupe division, where I teach religion. I also teach some music as well. I've taught music in Arrupe. I teach a music class in the high school, and I'm very involved with liturgical music, so the prayer and worship of the school. I also do a lot of work with a program in Arrupe that we call Manresa, which is a series of different opportunities that students have to try out different prayer practices and spiritual practices that I know we'll talk about in a little bit. So in the course of my time at BC High, and then prior to that as a student at Boston College, I've really gotten to know some of the ideals of Jesuit spirituality or Ignatian spirituality, and I'm really excited. Father Nolan invited me to talk about it.
This is great. Well, so for tonight, just to go over kind of the format for our viewers, if you have any questions at all or any comments, please type them into the comments section, and we'll do our best to get to any questions you might have. But this will just be a conversation with Ms. Felice and myself. It was great last couple of years to be able to teach with Ms. Felice with our religion classes for 7th and 8th grade. And so we're talking this evening about our Jesuit context here at BC High. And you might hear a lot about Jesuit schools and that we're a Jesuit and Catholic school. And so I'm a Jesuit myself. I'm a member of this religious order, the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius Loyola. And it's a real honor to be able to teach at a school like this that's part of a global network. And so we'll talk about some of the themes what does it actually mean to be a Jesuit school? And I thought maybe one way we could start off, Ms. Felice, was just talking about what was it like for us to have our retreat day, our 7th and 8th grade retreat day these last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it because it was an event or a series of events that just went so well and got such great reviews from the students. A day full of smiles and people getting to know each other better and having a good time. So because we have 2 cohorts coming in at different times, we ran 2 retreats, each with half of Arrupe mixed groups of 7th and 8th grade. And we kind of combined 2 themes that we spend a lot of time thinking and talking about at BC High, and specifically in the Arrupe division. One of them being finding God in all things, which is a great phrase associated with the Jesuits, kind of a hallmark of that spirituality that posits that we can find God in all things, both that God is speaking to us in all different ways, and also that these many experiences of beauty and love and companionship that we experience in our lives are ways that we experience God. So now that sounds very highfalutin, and this was a 7th and 8th grade retreat, so I promise that it was not a lot of pontificating or abstract thinking about the nature of finding God in all things. It was doing stuff. It was doing fun stuff. It was doing mosaic projects, other art projects, taking a nature walk, doing some stretching and physical activity, learning about friendship. So there were all sorts of workshops in the morning, and kids could choose which ones they wanted to do, and we assigned them to whatever their preferences were. They learned about music and science, and all of the faculty participated in leading these workshops. So it was a great time of the students seeing that all of their teachers are invested in their spiritual growth and their deepening awareness of God's love for them and God's work in the world. Then we had lunch, which is always key. If you get the food right on a retreat, it's definitely a good retreat. And we went with our usual BC High lunch, so you can't go wrong. We had a wonderful liturgy that was celebrated by Father Nolan outside. And we spent a lot of the rest of the afternoon in small groups and hearing from junior mentors and other faculty members about themes of community building and the common good. So we touched on some, more maybe advanced theological topics like Catholic social teaching and solidarity, but all of it contextualized in experiences that are appropriate and meaningful for 7th and 8th graders. And you're there, Father Nolan. Do you have anything to add?
Well, the weather was perfect, so that was really helpful to have most of it outside, and it seemed like the students were active the whole time. Certainly, there were some moments of quiet or some listening, but can you talk a little bit about that, just kind of keeping the students active throughout the day?
Yeah, and years of trial and error, and of course, countless studies and things that we've all observed show us that kids at this age, especially boys at this age, like to be moving, as I think many of us like to be moving, as we've learned in these months of having to stay in one place. So a lot of what we do, our pedagogy in the classroom, our efforts towards spiritual development, our exploration of the themes of the school and the values of the school are always done in the context of keeping people active, keeping everyone active. I wish I could say there's a strong theological foundation for that, other than that it works. But we are committed to seeing our students and knowing our students and doing what works best for them. So that has long been a characteristic of the work that we do, of kind of keeping everyone moving and active so that when we do settle in, it's a special time that shows the importance of what we're trying to do and everyone is in the right headspace to sit and be focused for that small amount of time.
Right. Well, it's St. Ignatius's idea of contemplatives in action, that we're going to have this time for prayer, but then we're going to put it into action and then be able to reflect on that action. And so it was just great to see. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about just seeing what this was like, our BC High Campus Ministry has an Instagram page. So if you go BC High Campus Ministry, you could see one of the latest videos is a recap of this retreat that Mr. Wynn put together. When we talk about St. Ignatius, the founder of the Jesuits, and you talk about this Manresa program, of course, Manresa is the spot where he started to write down his in his journal and come up with these spiritual exercises, continuing with that active theme and knowing how boys like to be on the move, like to be part of the action. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of these spiritual exercises that our 7th and 8th graders take part in? How does that all work?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. What a great way of framing it. It makes me feel much more Ignatian when you call them spiritual exercises. So I guess we're doing something right. So we've had this program for maybe the last 4 or 5 years that kind of presents students with a menu of different options of things that they can do during their flex block to explore the Ignatian identity of the school, to think more about prayer and spirituality, and to have experiences of prayer and worship. A couple of the elements of that are on hold right now. Unfortunately, we can't have quite as much student choice of, kids kind of wandering around. But we're keeping all these programs going. Some of them are really based in sort of a kind of reflective spirituality. So we've had activities like meditative coloring or working on art projects. We've had the language teachers lead the rosary in the language that the students are taking. So students can opt to spend the flex block both learning about the rosary and practicing their language skills and connecting with their language teacher. So that's another nice activity that we've done. We've had nature walks where we think at the end about, how did we experience God? Where did we see beauty? What do we want to offer our gratitude for? We try to spend as much time as we can in the chapel at BC High, which I hope many of you will have a chance to visit if you haven't yet. It is beautiful with beautiful stained glass. It's also on the other side of the school from Arrupe, so it means a little adventure for the guys as they walk through the school to get over to the chapel to have mass or to participate in a prayer service. We have prayer services with music. We have prayer services involving art. So we try a lot of different things, and we try to give them a bunch of options, and we encourage them to pick the ones that sound attractive to them, that sound like they match with their gifts and talents. And if it just so happens that they end up choosing the ones that are at the end of the semester because they forgot to do it earlier, well, there's a lesson to be learned in that as well. And we try to make each of them enjoyable, so no matter what the circumstances are, they're enjoying what they do in their Manresa activities.
Well, I think that's the great part about it. There's a real choice for the students, and there's a choice in general during our flex period for our 7th and 8th graders. Can you just talk a little bit in general about flex? I just think that's such a neat option to give our students ownership of their learning during that generally.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. I agree with you that it's a nice characteristic of our schedule, that we have a block most days of the week when students either are assigned to their music class or their wellness class, wellness being like their gym class, or they might be going to a Manresa, or they might be going to a study hall, or they might be choosing to go to a club instead. So it's a time when students can, again, I'm always focused on skills because I spent a lot of time with 7th and 8th graders, and I'm always thinking about how can they be growing. You know, you're developing the skill of managing your time and figuring out what you want to do and how can you get there and making choices about what you want your day to look like. But it's also just a little bit of breathing room during the day where you can get a little bit of homework done. You can check in with a teacher. We always have a math lab going, which is a fancy way of saying a math teacher who's available for extra help, which is always very popular. You can get involved in book club. You can get involved in a crafting club. We've had all sorts of different clubs in the past that give students a chance to maybe meet a new teacher, meet some new students, and try something new.
That's great. Yeah, I noticed that, you know, sometimes when we think of our Jesuit Catholic identity, it's easy to think of, well, that's something that happens in the chapel, or that's something that happens in religion class. Can you talk a little bit about these Ignatian ideals of imagination, of paying attention to one's feelings, and how that might kind of play out throughout our classes, or how we structure our guidance and advisory? How is imagination and feelings, paying attention to one's feelings, a part of our culture here at BC High?
Yeah, one of the reasons why St. Ignatius is such a compelling figure to teach and to learn about is we know so much about his humanity and his deep emotion. We know that he discovered God's will for him through daydreaming, which is kind of cool. The students often relate with that. We know that he had deep, deep friendships and found friendship to be such an important part of his spiritual life. We have, I think he wrote in his own journals or his autobiography, lots of stories of him crying, which is just very, very human thing to do and shows how attentive he was to the movement of his emotions, which kind of in 21st century language, we would talk about that being very emotionally healthy, and that sort of self-awareness is very good. A lot of those elements have really become a part of our culture, both through explicit professional development for our faculty and how to integrate these, and through programs that we run. So the idea of being able to reflect on what you've done is very important in this spirituality that was inspired by St. Ignatius and the Jesuits. It's also something that students they first start to be able to do with regularity around this age. The capacity for self-reflection really grows in the 7th and 8th grade. So even today, we had about a 20-minute homeroom period, and students looked over their grades and wrote down kind of where their grades were and what they still needed help with and what they hadn't finished. But we're really asked to think about, look back on the last 2 months. What are you proud of? Where do you still need assistance? So really to take that step back and look at what they're doing. And that's part of, I would say, almost every teacher's practice, is to encourage that stepping back, seeing what's happened, seeing what you can learn from it, and of course seeing what God might be trying to teach you, or how you can learn in that moment. The use of the imagination is always encouraged in Manresa. We do religion activities that are imaginative. There are activities in English class and social studies. A lot of the social studies curriculum involves different simulations where kids have to imagine themselves in a particular situation and figure out how all of that would play out. So that's really encouraged in that context as well. Was there a third element you mentioned that?
I think that was it. There should be 3. That would be very Trinitarian. But Um, we have a few minutes left with Ms. Felice. Ms. Felice teaches in our Arrupe division, named for Father Pedro Arrupe, worldwide leader of the Jesuits, who was one who coined the phrase that graduates from Jesuit schools should be men and women for others. And so we're speaking with Ms. Felice this evening. She also leads our liturgical choir and does so many things here at BC High. Leads our campus ministry for our Arrupe division as well. My name is Father Nolan, and at the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to, I really feel like Anderson Cooper here. This is so funny. At the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to talk a little bit about our Jesuit context in our high school, how that plays out in our high school. But if you have any questions, don't be afraid. Please type them into our comments. Or if you'd like to learn more, if you're a new family checking out BC High for the first time, you can email us at enrollment@bchigh.edu to learn more. So we're going to be having these conversations on different topics that are distinctive to BC High each Wednesday night, starting at 7:30 with our Arrupe division, and then 8 o'clock for our high school division. When we talk about Jesuit schools, we often talk about really good academics. And could you talk a little bit about the religion curriculum? The fact that it's a critical look at the history of Christianity.
Yeah, so we have taught a church history curriculum in Arrupe since our founding over 10 years ago, and have found it to be a really interesting way to introduce these topics to students. First of all, one thing that's really great is that it's not something that anyone is doing at their Catholic primary school, that they're not doing it in Sunday school or at religious ed, so it kind of levels the playing field. Kids can come in with some real anxiety about not having had religion before. It's not like math, where if you got dropped into 7th grade math and had never had math before, you would be in trouble. On the other side, sometimes kids come in a little bit cocky because they think they've gotten all this before. So it's a nice way to make something that's new for everyone, that involves heroes and villains and battles and conflicts and, great acts of sanctity and all sorts of different stories that you can tell. It's also something that allows us, because we continue it from 7th into 8th grade, to advance the kinds of assignments that we're giving so that they become more intellectually advanced as the students get older. And it allows us to drop in learning about spirituality, learning about Catholicism, learning about the Jesuits and contemporary practices like the sacraments as we go through the curriculum. But it's graded the same way as any other class, so we are really promoting the same academic skills and habits that other classes are. Test taking, paper writing, note taking, all of the skills that we want to set the boys up with.
And the great thing is the Manresa program, you talked about all these different spiritual practices, those are not graded, of course, right?
Yeah, and we often try to find things that fit with the curriculum. So maybe we might offer an experience, Manresa option for 8th graders that is digging a little bit deeper into a topic that we touched on in religion class. So we have ways to make curricular connections that kids can opt into, or they can opt to do something that's completely different.
Oh, that's great. When we think of the different principles for our grad, is there a particular story or something that comes up for you when you think of, certainly we're intellectually competent, but something related to our Jesuit context in terms of being open to growth, or our students being loving or religious, anything that kind of you think of in terms of the story?
This is the one he didn't prepare me for, folks. I'm trying to think of something clever on the spot. I think, our students in grades 7 through 12 display the characteristic of being loving in the deep friendships that they form, that we know from experience last well into adulthood, that experiences that are lifelong. So it's hard to overlook that the element of being loving and caring for one another really carries the day at BC High. I think the characteristic of being committed to doing justice is something that we explore really well across the curriculum in Arrupe, and it's something that we really focus on offering opportunities for students to learn more and to do more. We had a retreat last year that was based on the theme of being committed to doing justice that was focused on refugees, because we'd read the young adult novel Refugee that maybe some of the families that are watching have read. And at the end, they had the opportunity to do advocacy by writing to an elected official. They could write a postcard that Jesuit Refugee Services would then distribute to refugees as sort of a pick-me-up. They could do more research. So we really encourage students to explore that advocate side of who they want to be on behalf of justice.
That's great. Well, I know for 7th and 8th grade boys, they like to be hands-on. They like to have projects to work on. Can you talk a little bit about how the religion curriculum is kind of hands-on and project-based?
Yeah, we have found over the years, we found a couple great constructive hands-on things that students can do as part of the curriculum. In the 7th grade, we asked them to design a church or a house of worship that is, resonates with them, but not just the church, but the parish. So to really think about like the community and what does the community need, and how do we make places that are beautiful and inspire prayer, but that are also functional and serve the needs of the community. So there's a lot of conversation about that. There's a lot of learning new terms like pew and altar and tabernacle. But there's also a lot of popsicle sticks and Legos and construction paper and all that fun stuff. We conclude the 8th grade religion curriculum with an activity we call the Religion Rumble, which is a very melodramatic name for a bunch of partner projects that we then vote on, the ones that we not like the best, but the ones that we find the teachers find communicate content well and are very creative. So I've seen monasteries made out of cake. I saw a game once that was called, we might lose some people with this example, so maybe I shouldn't have started this one, but a game that was called Wheel of Martyrs, and you spun a wheel and a historical saint came up, and then there was an envelope and you opened it and learned about the saint. So there was no real game element to it, but it was a really cool spinning wheel. We've had crowns to learn about Charlemagne, and kids love making guillotines to talk about the French Revolution, although that has a very tenuous connection to the ultimate goals of our course. So that sort of creativity and really taking one thing about what we've learned that captures your imagination and digging deeper with it and having fun with it is a really important part of what we're trying to do.
Right, especially because you think of the 2,000 years you cover in the course of 7th and 8th grade, and really history of Western civilization, to be able to have a final project where you're focusing and digging in on one thing hands-on, that makes it so much more worthwhile than a kind of a list of facts and figures and dates and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and we're in a great position because we know that our fantastic colleagues in the high school are going to cover a lot of this stuff again at a different level, the same way kids do with the American Revolution, and there's all sorts of things that they learn more than once. So there's no pressure to kind of cram them full of information. We just go over the big picture and talk about the big trends and then have fun with the rest of it.
Yeah, I think a question a lot of people will ask is, well, my son didn't go to Catholic school, or we're not of the Catholic faith tradition. And I'll just share my 2 cents. The students who were not Catholic who didn't go to a Catholic school actually asked the best questions in my class, and they allowed everyone to kind of think and ponder, well, why is it that this is kind of how the faith has been has grown or developed, or what would be for you? For those parents who are thinking, well, I'm not sure about a Catholic school in particular?
Yeah, one of the you mentioned the grad at grad earlier, and one of the characteristics of the grad at grad is that students will be religious. And when you look at the descriptors that go beyond like the buzzword of it, it talks about how we want students to be connected to their own religious tradition. And I know, just like you were saying, I learn about my own religious tradition from the points of contact that other students bring in when they're talking about similar activities, when they're talking about similar themes. And our hope is that it's the same for students of other faiths, that they're learning about, how that commitment and that devotion is expressed in another context. I think we focus on a lot of the right things. I think we focus on a lot of the qualities that anyone would want their child to have: self-reflection, caring for other people, commitment to justice, selflessness. I think being a man or woman for others is a pretty good goal for anyone. And I think we've got a long track record of making that happen in a way that works for all the diverse kids that come through our doors.
Well, Ms. Felice, you have a long track record of being one of the best hosts, one of the best guests in this show. So thank you so much.
Guests coming up, and I know that they're going to continue, pick up right where I left off.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. And if you want to meet more people like Ms. Felice, who work and serve in our Arrupe division, tune in every Wednesday at 7:30, and we'll continue our conversation about the Jesuit Context with our high school division just after a few public service announcements. So, Ms. Felice, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And see you at school.
Great to chat.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So it is great to be with you on this information night for Facebook Live. My name is Father Nolan, and I work in the enrollment office here. And we just had the chance to speak for the last half hour with Ms. Felice from our Arrupe division. She leads our campus ministry in that division. She teaches 7th and 8th grade religion and leads our liturgical choir. And we shared a little bit about our educational philosophy, our culture here, our Jesuit context. And we're going to continue that conversation just a little bit in our high school. Before we do that, we wanted to invite you to a couple of great events coming up. We have a new virtual Eagle for a Day, our shadow program, where you can either on Tuesdays or Thursdays throughout the fall, you can, starting at 2 p.m., experience the day, a day in the life of an Eagle, whether it's a 7th grader like Aiden or a 9th grader like Derek, in an hour and a half. And you can meet some current students and chat with enrollment counselors like myself, and experience mini lessons, experience what lunch is like, our co-curriculars and sports. So Eagle for a Day is a great thing to connect with us on. And so you can do that by emailing us at enrollment@bchigh.edu. In addition to Eagle for a Day, it'd be great if you can join us on November 8th, Sunday, November 8th, for our virtual open house. And that will be from 10 to 1. And you can also join us a little bit early. We'll be live streaming a Mass if you'd like to join us from our Loyola Chapel. That's a virtual open house. Every Wednesday, we'll have these information nights on Facebook Live. And you can ask us questions throughout. We invite you to continue to ask us questions in the chat. Thank you for those who joined us for our first half hour. Lori says, my son did Eagle for a Day yesterday, and it's all he's been talking about. It was an amazing experience for him. So you've heard it here.